Hello and welcome to the Market Advantage podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11, talking about some price discrepancies from FanDuel and DraftKings. We're going to talk about the biggest price jump from one player or from one site to another for each position. And then we're going to talk about some guys that we like at each position as well. So starting off at the point guard position, Michael Carter-Williams is listed at only $6,000 on DraftKings tonight. $7,000 on FanDuel, obviously point guard eligible. He was dealing with an injury, but he's back now. And while he hasn't exactly shown big-time upside this year like he has in the past, he's also been kind of banged up. And for $6,000, though, on DraftKings, I think he's a guy that you can slot in and feel okay about it because John Wall, great offensive player. He's a pesky defender, but not exactly a great on-ball defender. And you look at the other guys who are priced around him, Mo Williams, Emmanuel Mudiay, who does have a great matchup, but also probably a lot more risky. Then you got backups like Ish Smith, Zach LaVine, similarly priced. So Michael Carter-Williams really stands out on DraftKings as a really nice point guard value.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, the guy's kind of a triple-double threat. At his ceiling, we've seen him rebound. Great assist guy. And, it looks like he's definitely healthy because he logged 40 minutes last game against Cleveland. So, he's going to play a ton of minutes. So I do like the matchup. I think Wall's kind of overrated a bit defensively. I mean, he's not a guy I target against heavily, but, definitely not going to shy away from it in tournaments, especially on DK.
Yeah, and speaking of other DK plays, and obviously this is a FanDuel play as well, Dennis Schroeder, under 5K on both sites. Jeff Teague, Kent Bazemore, both out. We know the drill with this by now. He's going to see low to mid-30s in minutes, and he's been productive. I mean, last game out, shot just 3 for 10, but 11, 9, and 6 for 32.5 DK points against Utah, which take that with a grain of salt, of course, because it's Utah. Great team defense, but it's almost like you play 4-on-4 in a tough matchup, and then the point guard is, do whatever you want to do, just don't try to attack the rim.
Yeah, I have no problem, attacking Utah with point guards there, especially, Schroeder showed off a great game, and, definitely going to shoot the ball up better probably tonight. Easier matchup against Jarrett Jack, so he's probably my top value play of the day for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of guys who are probably going to shoot pretty well tonight, Stephen Curry. He's $11,000 on FanDuel, 10-7 on DraftKings. And, a couple of poor shooting games really in his last three. 3 of his last 4, obviously Minnesota game excluded, where he put up 46 points, 46 actual points, not fantasy points. But he's still off to one of the best starts any of us have ever seen. He's averaging 54.8 fantasy points a game. Facing Kyle Lowry, who I don't think is a good defender. He's fast, and he gets his hands in passing lanes, things of that nature. He's a guy you love to play on your fantasy team, but he's certainly not a guy you shy away from. But I don't care who's guarding Steph Curry right now. It could be any player from any point in NBA history, and I'm playing Steph Curry.
Yeah, especially tonight at home against Toronto. Finally get a game that we don't have to worry about, possibly them blowing them out. It should be a close game. Curry's easily the top player. I can't see playing Wall over him. Lowry, at his price for cheaper, definitely has some upside too, but Curry's the guy.
Yeah, and with Draymond Green questionable, we've seen this before. More often than not, he's fine and ends up playing. But if Draymond Green doesn't play, he's not much of a scorer, as we know, but he is a facilitator and a guy that's a key part of that offense. So Curry took 31 shots last game. If he ends up taking anywhere near that again, tend to think that more often than not he's going to drop more than 13 of them in the bucket. So I'm with you. Steph Curry is, if I'm paying up for one guy, it's Steph Curry easily. Shooting guard here, talking about some price differences. We've got Joe Johnson, $6,300 as a shooting guard on FanDuel. He's a small forward on DraftKings at $5,300, so $1,000 difference there. And he's a guy who, he's been a really frustrating guy to play over the past couple of years because he shows big upside at times, then other times he just disappears. Kind of how he's evidenced that over his last few games. He had that 41-point game on just 4 of 13 shooting against Houston. All of a sudden, he 10 assists and 7 rebounds. I have no idea where that came from. In the last 2, 23 back down to 15 in 41 minutes. So he's been very, very inconsistent. He's a GPP type of play, but he's also the guy with the biggest price discrepancy there. So if I'm making a ton of lineups, I might throw him in a couple. But if I'm targeting Atlanta, I'm going down low.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Joe Johnson, probably one of the most frustrating players in the NBA just because, he's a good player. When he's smart and actually wants to play basketball out there, which usually it doesn't look like he ever wants to play. So it's always frustrating watching him. But, I can't really get behind him in cash games for sure, but I mean GPP's Atlanta's defense hasn't been great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then other shooting guard options here. I know you're a big fan of Eric Gordon. Hard not to be. The guy's locked into big minutes right now. He's going to see mid to upper 30s. Had a really bad game last time out. Just 11 actual points, 17 fantasy points. But, I mean, that's about as bad as it gets for a guy like Eric Gordon. At 6,300, obviously you're hoping for a much better floor than 17. But, I mean, more often than not, this is the guy that's going to go out, chuck up 10 threes, knock a couple of them down, and, he's going to get you your 25 to 30 fantasy points and just be a nice cash game play.
Yeah, I'm with you there. He's probably one of my favorite shooting guards tonight just because he's probably a safe call in this matchup. Denver ranks 29th against shooting guards and fantasy points allowed. And, New Orleans has 106 total tonight. That's second behind Golden State. So they're going to put up a ton of points.
Yeah. Andrew Wiggins, another guy priced similarly there at shooting guard, small forward on FanDuel. Another guy with a decent floor, but I don't go out of my way to target guys in matchups like ones against Miami who just tries to slow the pace way down because their players, some of them, no names in particular, just don't want to be running the entire time or can't run the entire time. So I think he's an okay option, but the problem with Wiggins is really, in his short career, has always been the guy scores points, but he doesn't do much else as far as peripheral stats. And in cash games, I don't really like guys that are scoring dependent. I mean, he plays a ton of minutes, but I'd much rather have a guy that's potential to go 12, 5, and 5 than a guy that's going to go 25, 1, and 1.
Yeah.
Will Barton's another guy. I don't know about as far as cash games. He's got a really cheap price tag, but last few games he's been absolutely incredible. 38.75, 48.5 DK points. Before that, though, 9.5, 16.25, 42. So been all over the map, but with Wilson Chandler finally officially done for the year, he's going to still be there. He's going to be getting minutes, but as we've seen with him, it's kind of a situation of if he gets hot, he gets big minutes. If he's not, he sits on the bench.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Not taking him in cash games just for that reason. We've seen the upside in the last two games, and for 4,700 there on DK, and a rather weak shooting guard spot tonight. I don't mind punting with Barton there and hoping for big minutes and big points.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, either way at 4,700, he's likely not to kill you. Small forward, biggest difference here being Carmelo Anthony, $9,600 on FanDuel, $85 on DraftKings. I'm really not touching him at his near 10K price on FanDuel, really for any reason. But he finally does look healthy. And whether you like the guy or don't like the guy, I mean, I wouldn't want him on my actual team, but I don't think he's a bad guy to play on your DraftKings team tonight because he has been consistent. I mean, he's finally moving around well. 40 or more points in 4 straight games. 40 more fantasy points, that is. 25 or more real points there in 4 straight. So he's seeing upper 30s in minutes, which was kind of the problem with him before. He was overpriced, wasn't playing many minutes, but he's been productive recently. So I think he's a guy you can consider, especially because it looks like Nicolas Batum's going to be playing the 2 tonight. Marvin Williams starting at the 3. So it's a little bit better of a matchup for him not having to face Batum.
Yeah, I mean, Carmelo's going to throw up a ton of shots, 20-plus field goal attempts in the last 4 or 5 games there. I mean, he's been consistent, 29, 26, 29, 25 in scoring. Like you mentioned, I mean, for 8,500, you're going to probably get a 40-point floor there, and we know he can go off, for 50-plus fantasy points on any given night.
Yeah, and then we got to talk about the guy I kind of mentioned here a second ago, Nick Batum. He just got Player of the Week. I mean, the guy's been unbelievable in his last 3 games. 10 for 18, 10 for 17, 11 for 19 from the field, 32 or more fantasy points in 4 straight, over 46 in his last 2. Believe in the revenge game all you want in the last game. He was great in the games before that. His price is getting up there pretty quickly, though. So I think, given his price tag, I mean, I don't mind him in cash games, but I think he's better suited for GPPs for me because even if he gets you your 35 points, I mean, that's about what you need, especially at his FanDuel price.
Yeah, I think with us kind of paying up for guys like Anthony Davis and Steph Curry in cash games, it's going to be tough to fit Batum in there at small forward. But if you're going balance and only playing maybe one guy like Davis or Curry, I think Batum's actually a pretty safe floor guy, and he's shown his upside over the last few games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the great thing about him is he's a guy that in years past we all played because he was a peripheral guy, and then if any scoring was not any scoring, but more than 10, 12 points was kind of a bonus, but. I mean, now he's really doing it all, so he's definitely thriving in that new role. At power forward here, we're looking at Chris Bosh as far as price differences go. sitting at $7,300 on DraftKings, 82 on FanDuel. Facing off against a Minnesota team that at times has looked like a good defense, but Chris Bosh is looking great recently. I mean, 48, 44, 38, 43 in his last 4 games. He's been incredibly consistent. So 8,200 on FanDuel is a little bit pricey for my taste, but I mean, if you slot him in, you were talking about that balanced lineup thing on DraftKings. I think Chris Bosh makes a lot of sense in that type of lineup.
Yeah, I mean, looking at his last matchup against Utah, 25-8 with 4 blocks. I mean, that's a good Utah front court. Yeah, there was no Gobert that game, but still facing off against Favors, and that's a tough task.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been incredibly consistent, I think, this season. And while he's not a big block guy, I would never really expect 4 blocks again from him. I mean, he's been going consistently 20 and 10, so it's been nice to see.
Yeah, it's been a nice little run for him there. Elsewhere at power forward, of course, Anthony Davis facing off against Denver. You know the drill with Denver by now. It's not a good defensive front court. It hasn't been for quite a while. And Anthony Davis, there was speculation. We saw originally he was doubtful for Sunday's game. Then they said, oh, hey, by the way, he's going to play. And then, oh, by the way, he's going to go for 36 and 11 with 4 blocks and score 61 fantasy points. So, I mean, maybe he was completely healthy. Maybe he wasn't. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you can get he and Steph Curry tonight, they're both on their game. I mean, you're looking at potentially 120, 130 points from the two guys.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're trying to fit him into our lineups. And I mean, because there's decent value tonight, we can definitely do so. And I mean, the matchup's just a line for both those guys to really go off.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great spot. Other guys at power forward, I love Draymond Green generally in cash games. With him being questionable, that's not a spot for me. But I think my favorite play, price considered, if you're not going with Anthony Davis, is Thad Young. He's had a couple big games recently. Still under 6K on both sites, and we kind of mentioned that Atlanta team, one of the worst rebounding teams in all of basketball. And Thad Young, I mean, he's got 9 or more rebounds, looks like, in 3 of his last 4 and 4 of his last 6 games, including a game against Atlanta where we went for 14 and 9 in 34 minutes. So I think it gives you a nice high floor. And, I mean, the way he's playing right now, he's got a ceiling. And Brooklyn doesn't really have a reliable scorer outside of really Brook Lopez. So, I mean, those two guys might do a lot of damage down low tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of looking at this game as a great fantasy option. I mean, they've already played once, and they both destroyed each other on offense. So I think you can kind of look at that game and definitely grab a few pieces from it, including Thad Young as being one of the better value plays, along with Schroeder as well from that game.
Yeah, and speaking of Brook Lopez, in that game, first time out against Atlanta, 27-11 with 3 assists as well. Shot 11 for 16. He's $8,000 on FanDuel, 71 on DraftKings, so he's got a nice price discount there. You and I were kind of discussing before the show which guys we're looking at in cash games, and I said I was kind of hesitant about Brooklyn playing both guys in front court, but the more I think about it, it's kind of they're too cheap for their potential production. You get both guys for $13K on DraftKings, and I mean, it's crazy to think they couldn't easily get 70 points here. Yeah,
I mean, kind of looking at the last matchup too, they both had a solid game, both offensively and rebounding the ball. And, Atlanta's, they're bottom 5 in rebounding. I mean, they just come in and, any center's just been picking up easy double-doubles against them. And I think on DK, where he's just 7,100, I mean, that's it. That's a steal.
Yeah, and I mean, there's really no other options at the center position that really stand out tonight as great plays. So I'm on board with Brook Lopez as the cash game play. And he's probably going to be really popular because whether you do your research or not, if you just scroll down about 2 inches and you see he played Atlanta about a week and a half ago, people are just going to see that and play him, which isn't always the entire story, but that's a lot of the story in this match because Atlanta can't stop any bigs right now. So that's going to wrap things up for us here. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Lots of other great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.